So Monday night, election night, a lot of cheers, a lot of boos, a lot of mixed emotions, a lot of people just raged and angered and feeling betrayed. There's a lot of emotion in the room, but let's just take a moment, take a deep breath, and break this down. I found this kind of interesting. This is from the BBC, and I find it interesting that um, I went to kind of outside Canadian media. That's why I went to the BBC to see their take on this election. Because sometimes the best way to find uh, a different viewpoint is to get outside the country that you're in and see how they examine your election. So the BBC wrote this up saying why the Liberals won and the Conservatives lost. Mark Carney's Liberals have won Canada's federal election, riding a backlash of anti Trump sentiment to form the next government. It is a stunning political turnaround for a party who widely considered dead and buried just a few months ago. Yeah, it's a bit of a twist for us too. But we know why. It's not yet clear if the party, which has been in power for almost a decade, will be able to secure a majority as results continue to roll in. Either way, the Prime Minister faces major challenges, including divisions in the country laid bare by the campaign. Here are 5 takeaways from an election which we saw the Conservative opposition make major gains, but still lose. So that's the what I mean that there's a bit of silver lining is that even though Pierre Polyev lost his seat, lost his riding, did not win the prime ministership, there was a huge gain for the Conservative Party. Take notice. And we're going to get into that later on here. But here's what their breakdown is. So, Trump's threats become a defining issue. There is no doubt the U.S. president's tariff threats and comments undermining Canada's sovereignty played an outsized role in this election, suddenly making leadership and the country's economic survival the defining issues of this campaign. Mark Carney used it to his advantage, running as much against Trump as he did against his main opposition rival, conservative Pierre Polyev. Carney warned Canada was at a crisis moment, saying frequently on the campaign trail and in his victory speech that Trump wants to break us so America can own us. Polyev brought Trump up much less frequently during his campaign, focused his message on domestic issues, the cost of living, the housing affordability crisis, and crime, targeting the Liberals for their record on those matters. So that was the big thing of this entire campaign is we saw Pierre Polyev, and this is what made him such a strong figure. That's what got him to the top of the charts in polling before Mark Carney came in, was that Pierre Polyev really hammered hard on domestic issues. He really hammered hard when Trudeau was in office and he was the opposition, the House of Commons. He hammered hard on the cost of living, on housing, on crime, on the fentanyl crisis. And that's what made him a shooting star. But we're going to show later on how Pierre Polyev shot himself in the foot numerous times that ushered in Mark Carney to sly his way to the top. That the Conservatives kind of had a lot of missteps that made their own failure happen and gave the baton right to Mark Carney's hands. Where Mark Carney was using the Trump narrative and using the Trump rhetoric of the 51st state and America annexing us as fear-mongering propaganda to scare people into his victory. Carney, who's declared the old relationship with the U.S. over, plans to start negotiations on a new economic and security relationship immediately following the election. Kevin O'Leary, a Canadian businessman close to Trump who previously ran for the Conservative leadership, acknowledged it was a successful campaign strategy. Yes, scare people. That's the oldest trick in the book. Scare people into voting for you. Scare people by saying that the other country next to us wants to take us over, and you got to vote for me because I'm going to be your best fighter. It's as old as day. It's as old as politics started. I wouldn't consider it a successful campaign, but he did win the minority, so that's as close as you can get. Right now, Canadians are very frustrated with America, and Carney has used that to his advantage, he told the BBC just before the polls closed. He was able to distract Canadians from his own mistakes and say, stop looking at that. Look south of the border. I can save you. That was his gimmick. That was his tactic. Hey, don't pay attention to our party's misfortunes and our party's wrongdoings for the last decade. Don't look at the crime. Don't look at your backyard. Pay attention to TV because Donald Trump is evil. That was the entire Carney campaign. Second point they make is a stunning debut for a political newcomer. At the start of the year, Carney was a former central banker with no experience. Ray. As a politician. By mid-March, he was being sworn in as prime minister, the first to have never held elected public office before, after a resounding win in the Liberal leadership race. Now he's faced the Canadian electorate as a first-time campaigner, won an Ottawa area seat in the House of Commons, and steered his party to an unlikely victory. It was pretty likely considering the fact that this is a central banker that came from the WEF. He had all the lobby groups, he had the insiders by his foot, and they just pushed him in. They pushed him in. They kicked out Ruby Dalla in the leadership race. They kicked out Tanner Aaron in the Nepan. I can't say it. Can't do it in a French accent. In that riding, and Mark Carney took over that riding, won that riding. And so this was all set up. It was all set up for Mark Carney to just become prime minister. Simple as that. Carney had long flirted with entertaining Canadian politics, and he seized this moment, swooping in after former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's sudden resignation in January. He also took full advantage of his new political landscape, leaning into his experience helping Canada and the UK navigate previous crises at a time when Canadians were feeling anxious about their economic future. Yes, Mark Carney was not only the bank governor of England and Canada, but advised Justin Trudeau during his campaign when there was a financial crisis. And Carney is also an individual through his company Brookfield, through his investments, has been also pushing a net zero policy. So even though Carney has not held a seat in office, even though Mark Carney is a complete outsider, he is an insider. He's the outsider insider. He never had a riding. He's not elected into office in the same democratic principle, but he's been very influential in Canadian politics. He's got his hand deeply inside Parliament, which is, again, why I just figured that they've already installed Carney this much. They're probably going to find a way to push him to be elected in this election. Number 3, Conservatives make gains but still fall short. In a different election, this would have been a successful one for the Conservatives. In 2011, the Conservatives won a majority with 39.6% of the vote. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is on track to beat that this time with roughly 41.4% of the vote, with the most polls reporting, according to Elections Canada. They are currently projected to have won 144 seats. That's up from 120 at dissolution when the election was called in March. But with the progressive vote coinciding around the Liberals, those numbers weren't enough this time. The election results have highlighted divisions in Canada and could pose a challenge for Carney. Notably, the Liberals are largely shut out of Alberta and Saskatchewan, oil-rich and gas-rich prairie provinces, where a sense of alienation from the center of power in Ottawa has long festered. Even before the election, some in those regions were warning of a national unity crisis if the Liberals won another mandate. Carney touched on those divisions in his victory speech, acknowledging the millions who had voted for a different outcome. I intend to govern for all Canadians, he said. Meanwhile, Poilievre's message, which relentlessly focused on cost of living issues, especially on housing affordability, resonated with many young people. Support for the Conservatives outpaced Liberals by 44% to 31.2% among 18 to 34-year-olds, a Nanos poll on April 25th indicated. The divide was more stark among younger men. Separately, Abacus data polling found that about 18% of 18 to 29-year-olds were worried about Trump. That jumped to 45% for voters over 60, suggesting a polarization on issues between generations. Yes. And you could see right now, as you're reading social media, as you're looking at the reactions, you could see there's tensity between generations. You could see this is triggering a lot of people. You could see that there's going to further separate a lot of the Canadian population. And that's not good. That is not good. They're intending for this to happen. They're intending to further divide us because that is the goal. That is the tactic, to keep escalating tensions, keep further dividing people on trivial issues. Let's just say they want to further divide people so that the Liberal Party, the establishment, Mark Carney, and people that he surrounds himself with can usher in these insane policies and push in their authoritarianism onto Canadians. That's what they did when it came to the mandates. That's what it came to the pandemic. And now we're seeing it again because now we're in a trade war. That's now the new pandemic that Canadians have to deal with. On Monday night, Poilievre remarked on demographic breakthroughs Conservative had made, including with younger Canadians. We gave voices to countless people across the country who have been left out and left behind for far too long. In this election, the smaller political parties have taken a hit as Canadians choose to park their votes with either the Liberals or the Conservatives, especially the left-wing New Democrats or NDP. Some of the smaller parties have lost a significant amount of vote share, particularly the NDP, who have received just 6% of votes counted across Canada so far, compared with 18% in 2021. Jagmeet Singh, who had been NDP leader for almost 8 years, lost his own riding in British Columbia and announced he will be stepping down. He's not British Columbia. He's Brampton area, right? So BBC, you might want to track that. Obviously, I know this night is a disappointing night for New Democrats, he added. We're only defeated if we stop fighting. The Greens have also seen their vote share cut in half from 2% to 1%. So, a lot to take in for this. But like I said, there are some good, there's some bad, there's some ugly to this. And regardless of the outcome, that's why I was kind of, blank slate going into this. I didn't predict anything. I didn't cheer on any specific political party because I figured in the end, Canadians ourselves are going to have to fix this mess because Parliament is just so corroded. These politicians, these political parties have just become so corrupted and leave to special interests and not to their own constituents that it's going to take us to solve this. It's going to take Canadians ourselves to come together and combat these problems head on. So here's just a little graph here that BBC put together, and you can see the change of vote since 2021, percentage point changes in parties, share of the national vote. So you can see the Green Party, Bloc Québécois, People's Party, NDP. Look at NDP. They lost 11.5% of their votes from 2021. I guess all that work at, collating Justin Trudeau and avoiding a non-confidence vote didn't really work out. Didn't really work out. Really showed the NDP's true colors. That this working party that used to encapsulate a lot of younger people completely failed those people. And a lot of the former NDP went towards the Conservatives, or they went towards the Liberals. That's why you're seeing a bigger outcome for the Liberals at 11.1% and Conservatives at 7.5%. So it's a lot bigger for the two main rival parties, but a lot of the smaller parties definitely hit the blow. And here is Mark Carney in his victory speech. And listen to the wording that he uses victory speech compared to his campaign. Very, very telling. Listen to that.
We see every day what the politics of slogans and anger and chaos are doing south of the border. They are dividing and they are weakening the Americans.
So again, Carney's tactic, don't look at us. Don't worry about our problems. Don't worry about the fact that the Liberal Party has used endless slogans and divisive language throughout this campaign. I mean, look at your podium right there. You have Canada Strong. That's a slogan. Elbows up. That's a slogan. That's purposely done to manipulate people into your party. But what he's doing here is scaring people and saying, no, don't look at us. Look at the states. Look at the southern border. Ooh, America. Ooh. Showing the hypocrisy of this campaign.
And that is why, that is what, they are not united anymore. United in name only. And now the Americans want.
So he's saying, look at America. They're only united in name only. As you saw with this election, and you're seeing more and more of it with the reaction of this election, we're not so united either. We're not so united either. And this election, Mark Carney is not going to be this person that's going to bring people together. Mark Carney, just like the Liberal tactics have been doing for over a decade now, is going to make further division of people. They've already kicked out, pretty much to the curb, Alberta and Saskatchewan. Two big prairie provinces that are very much part of Canada. They're part of our natural resources. They have huge impact on our GDP. They're the energy sector. They're the agriculture sector. You really want to lose them? You really want to push them further to the point that they will succeed out of Canada? You really want that to happen?
Our strength. They want our resources, our water, our land. They want our country. There's your answer. There's your answer. Because Canada is not America. Canada is not America. Thank God. America is a melting pot. Look around this room. We're all Canadians. We're all Canadians. We're all distinct. We're all Canadians. Canada is unresolved. It is true that President Trump has betrayed Canada. He's betrayed Canada. And he has ruptured the global economy. Our old relationship with the United States is over, unfortunately.
So, there you go. Mark Carney taking advantage of Trump's rhetoric, which I would say Trump is a huge factor into giving Mark Carney the ability to become prime minister. I feel like all this just played out. It was almost like it was planned to trigger people, to scare them to vote for Mark Carney, the central banker globalist that is saying he's going to save Canada. Canada strong, elbows up. But we know from past investments, we know who his friends are, we know what advisors he's listening to. He's going to sell us out hard. He is going to sell us out hard. And while people are worried that Trump's going to take our sovereignty, Canada's sovereignty is already gone. Already pretty much gone. And it's going to get worse with someone like him. But regardless, whoever the leader was, whoever was going to win this election, as I stated before, we're going to be constantly vigilant. We got to make sure these people are on track and stay focused on serving the needs of Canadians. And if they don't, if they fall out of the line, if they completely betray us, then we have to react accordingly. Then we have to go out. Then we have to get people on the streets. And I don't mean like pitchforks and torches and beating people up. That's not what I mean. I mean that we need to do peaceful protests, like we saw with the Freedom Convoy, like we saw with the farmers in Netherlands, like we saw with the Amazon workers, like you see with the Canada Post workers. That's how you get things going. That's how you get things going. And you saw how the country was scared and the politicians were scared when people of all ages, of all walks of life, of all different backgrounds, of all different provinces come together, uniting on a central front. Saw how scared they are, because that is what is going to motivate politicians enough to do the right thing. Not just giving blind faith and thinking that, okay, he's in, so walk away, go back to whatever you're doing. So that was him announcing that. But back to the article here, because Sachi Curl, president of the Angus Reid Institute, a nonprofit public opinion research organization, told the BBC that Trump's rhetoric was behind the shift to the Liberals. The threats, the annexation talk, all of that has been a huge motivator for left of center voters, she said. The sovereignist Bloc Québécois have maintained a vote share around 7%. They are on track to win 23 seats in Quebec. This is based on around 97% of polling reporting. Canada doesn't have a two-party system, even though it has historically voted in conservative or liberal governments in some form. In the country's political system, these smaller parties will play a role in parliament. Both the NDP and the Bloc have at some points formed official opposition in the Commons. Yes, many people remember Tom Mulcair and Jack Layton NDP ridings that old opposition that outdid the Liberal Party back in the day when it was Stephen Harper as Prime Minister. So it's going to be very interesting. And I don't know what's going to come out of this, because the fact that instead of, the NDP Green Liberal coalition, now looks like there might be a conservative Bloc Québécois coalition. Maybe that's going to be the official opposition. We'll see where this goes. That's all you can do. You just got to see what the outcomes are, and if things steer off course, then we're gonna obviously report on it and react accordingly. So here is the Ipsos poll. And they asked this question: what is your main reason for voting for this party? So they picked the big three: conservative, liberal, and NDP. And what's interesting about this is kind of the feeling ground of a lot of voters here in Canada. Because there's a lot of people, especially in America, have commented on this election saying, what the hell are you doing, Canada? You deserve this. How dare you vote for another globalist? I thought you wanted to be done with Justin Trudeau. Here's just a bit of a recap just to kind of get the playing ground of this. So they asked 57% of people that vote conservative said that they like the party best, compared to 49 for the Liberals and 51 for the NDP. 33% of Liberals votes, though, which they won that bracket. I want to make sure the other party does not win. So you could tell kind of where people's minds are when they were voting for Liberal. That it wasn't just specifically on the fear-mongering that Mark Carney was dangling in front of them with the Trump rhetoric. that it was also the fear tactics of saying that here Polyev, if he gets in, he's going to defund the CBC. He's going to take away child care. He's going to take away dental care. He's going to do this. He's going to cut back social programs. He's going to make healthcare worse. He's going to do all this crazy stuff, this radical stuff. He's the maple syrup mega. And that's not the case. That's actually not the case. And you actually look into Polyev, he said he's not going to take away dental care. He's not going to take away daycare. He's just going to change it from the liberal policy that is just absolutely apprehended. They're going to change it for the better. They're going to make it so that there's more possibility. There's more outlets for people to get to daycare. Because right now, Liberal and NDP coalition, their $10 day daycare, they don't offer enough facilities. So people are going to be waiting behind 6-7 years to get $10 day daycare. It doesn't make sense. And then the NDP at 21%, I want to express my disgust with all other parties. So just kind of showing where Canadians lie in that regard there. So here's even Polymarket. And I want to show this because you could see how much of a divide there was before Mark Carney got in, where Pierre Poilievre was on the top. Pierre Poilievre, again, knocking it hard on domestic issues. That was his strong suit. That's what made him a very popular candidate. That's what made him recognizable. And then Mark Carney got in, and things started to slip. Mark Carney got in. Pierre Poilievre stepped a little bit outside of his traditional hammering hard on domestic issues and continued to boast the rhetoric of the trade war. And I felt that was kind of a bit of a hit at him, a bit of a misstep for that party, considering the fact that you're now transitioning away from focusing on domestic policies in Canada to just repeating the same rhetoric you hear on the mainstream media, from the Liberal Party, from the NDP Party, from every other party. And hilariously, CTV News thinks that the reason why the Conservatives lost is because they didn't talk about Trump enough. They want the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre to talk more about Trump. No, that's why he was losing. Because people are realizing that why so you're just turning away from everything that's going on in Canada. You're not going to focus on us. You're not going to focus on our situation within our backyards. So that's one of the things that cost him a vote. We're going to get into later on many other details on why Pierre Poilievre unfortunately shot himself in the foot numerous times that cost him his riding, cost him to lose a bit of seats there. There was some good out of the Conservative Party. Like they said, 120 to 144. That's a big uptake, but they shot themselves in the foot with that. So, Candace Malcolm of Juno News did this little breakdown here on her X account. Major takeaways from the election. The Conservative Party of Canada held its best night ever. 7.9 million Canadians marked CPC on their ballot, representing 41.6% of the vote. Pierre Poilievre lost his own seat, in part because of a ridiculous sabotage campaign called the Longest Ballot Initiative that made our democracy look like a complete and utter joke. Yes. And that is why during election night, I want to pay extraordinary amount of attention and remind people that in that riding, that they changed the boundaries, that has the most illegal migration population. They brought a lot of people into that particular area, had 91 different candidates. 91 candidates from political parties that I have no idea, I never even heard of. One of them was like the marijuana party. I didn't even know that existed. And also, it's legal. Like, what else is that party going to do? It's already legal. Sorry. CPC will gain 24 net new seats LPC up 11, NDP down 19, Bloc down 11. Jagmeet Singh lost his own seat. He will go down in his history as one of the biggest losers in Canadian politics as he stepped down as ND leader. Maxime Bernier lost his own seat again. And the small but significant PPC vote in places like Brampton potentially handed Mark Carney his victory. So, People's Party, the NDP, and the Green Party just completely tanked. Doug Ford. This is hilarious. Doug Ford has been ousted as the liberal he is. He and his cronies interfered in the election on behalf of the Carney Liberals and planted stories in leftist press to try to deflate Poilievre. And what's even more hilarious is that if Poilievre lost his seat, if he steps down as conservative leader, conservative insiders want to push Doug Ford as the leader. What? You see what what this guy is capable of. That would be a huge mistake. Poilievre performed better in Ontario than Ford did provincially. Ford won in February with 42.9% of the vote. Last night, Poilievre got 44.5% of the vote in Ontario. Mark Carney thinks he won the election. In reality, the corporate press and the CBC used every last dirty trick in the book and barely pushed him across the finish line. Legacy media pollsters were dead wrong. Canadians are waking up. More than 8 million voted in Take Back Our Future. We lived on to fight another day. That's just a bit of a breakdown on that on behalf of Candace Malcolm here. Here's an example. This is the ballot from Carleton. This is Pierre Poilievre's riding. Look at that. Look how big that is. Our riding was like this. They're like here. How do you even fold that? How do you put that into a box? Like how do you fold that into paper ballot? You have to take it like a bed sheet. You gotta get another person in there and just kind of wrap it around. That's enough to cover a bedspread, for God's sakes. 91 different candidates. And they were okay with this. They happened to be okay with this. Elections Canada was just okay with this. Oh, there's just happened to be 91 candidates. You don't find it all suspicious. You don't find it all crazy that all of them are in this one particular riding that Pierre Poilievre was in, and that the legacy media, the liberal establishment, the NDP, the Green Party, all wanted to find a way to prevent Pierre Poilievre from winning that seat. You don't find that at all suspicious. So I stated, retweeting Jasmine Lane, because she asked, do Canadians hate Trump more than they love Canada? And as I stated, this election was purely driven on fear. Fear of Trump, fear of America, fear of Poilievre, fear of right-wingers, fear of left-wingers, fear of other generations. Canada over the years has become so divisive of trivial tactics purposely to ignore the substantial problems affecting the majority of our population. Carney, a WEF central banker, scared people into his victory. It wasn't because of issues. It wasn't because of his expertise. It was simply a dirty, manipulative gimmick that's been used over and over again by neoliberal oligarchs to capture the population. That's what happened. It's not the fact that Canada decided, hey, we just want globalism. They were furious when it was Trudeau. They were furious when it was Trudeau. They were ready. They were begging for an election. They were begging for this guy to get out. They were demanding so many people to do a non-confidence vote on Justin Trudeau so we fast-track an election immediately. And then all of a sudden, Mark Carney gets in because they use this cynical tactic onto us, onto Canadians, primarily the older generation, to scare them to continue on this tirade. That's what happened. All this elbows up, all this make Canada great, all this, wrong, going against Trump, how Pierre Polyev is the evil one that's going to take away social programs. That's all part of this tactic. Because, like I said, Canada's sovereignty is already gone. With or without Trump, it's already gone. The WEF, the minute that Klaus Schwab admitted that he and his cohorts penetrated through those cabinets, I can't do his accent. As soon as they admit that, that's how you know the country's done. And no one says a word about this. No one says a word. But everything was focused on Trump. Everything. So much so that it is just sickening at this point to see so much just rhetoric, baseless arguments, this fear tactics, just absolutely crazy. It's like talking about your ex-husband, the mentality of some people. Like, Trump did not cause the fentanyl crisis. Trump did not, cut the bank accounts of the Freedom Convoy. Trump did not open the borders here in Canada and flooded our country with mass migration. That was all us. That was our parliament. That was our government. And our government then used the rhetoric of Trump to scare people to continue that on.